morning, good morning, good morning. It is 5:30 in the morning on a Monday morning. Monday, July 14th, 2025. 5:30 in the morning, that means it's time to pull a random object out of the Random Object Randomogrifier, a toy from the toy box, and start drawing it. I'm recording. I'm going to go ahead and spritz these watercolors so they're nice and juicy later on. That way we can just tap, tap, tap and we don't have to scrub into them. Let's see here. Today we have a little lamb, little ewe is what it's called. It actually says ewe on the bottom of it. E-W-E. Jew. It had, but its earlier pronunciations had all of the letters pronounced ewe, but we've dropped all that. We just call it a ewe so we can say cute little things in our kitsy little signs in our kitchen that says use not fat, use fluffy. But it is a U according to the label on the bottom of it from Safari. It is a Safari toy. If you couldn't tell, the way to tell is the amount of detail in the fur and the eyes and all that other stuff. Safari pays a lot of attention to the details like that. I'm going to block this in real quick. Want to make sure we have room for all the details that we're going to add. We don't want the feet running off the page. We don't want the shadow running off the page, which I think I've already got issues with. Yeah, we want to make sure we have room for everything on the page, including the shadow. We're just going to block everything in real quick, and then we can go in and we start adding some details. We domesticated sheep some 10,000 years ago. We know that we started domesticating sheep 10,000 years ago. There's plenty of evidence of that. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we got them to follow us around. We picked sheep because they huddled together. I wondered about why we picked sheep and not goats. Goats have more meat, easier to milk. But we did domesticate goats. We just domesticated goats for food instead of fur. I don't know why 10,000 years ago we didn't domesticate them for both, because we eat sheep. And we domesticated them for fur. But it's all conjecture. Nobody really knows because there's nobody to ask from 10,000 years ago. But the best guess is because sheep huddle together, where goats do not. So the best guess is they picked something that was already partway domesticated. And it's easy to look back with our 21st century eyes and say, you know, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? But the thing we have to remember is what they were doing was based on their survival. They were making decisions based on what they could see at the time without knowing anything else. They didn't have, you know, it's not like they had a written record of what kind of animals would be better for food, what kind of animals would be better for fur. They just had to look around and see what was available to them, conduct a little triage and say, okay, well, these are easier to catch because they already huddled together, so let's stick with them. Then they still domesticated goats for food, so. But 10,000 years ago is when they domesticated them. They've been they've been making yarn. They've been spinning yarn for 20,000 years. The what do they call them things? The drop spindles. They're wooden sticks that are weighted with a hole in one end, where you put your wool in it, and you can use wool or sinew or any kind of excuse me, any kind of fibrous material, and spin it together, and it makes it stronger. But they started doing that 20,000 years ago because we find the drop spindles in the caves. We find the drop spindles in all kinds of settlements. That ear is just in the wrong place for me. It gives it more of a dog look, and I need it to look more like a sheep. There we go. There we go. Now she's more sheep looking. Now she's looking more friendly. I am not going to try to draw every tuft of fur. I'm going to draw essence of fur. That's just not what we do here. We know they were wearing sewn clothing 20,000 years ago. We know they were making strings 20,000 years ago. We know they began domesticating sheep 10,000 years ago, but it was 5,000. It wasn't until 5,000 years ago that they started shearing them. Up until then, they would just follow them around and collect the tufts of fur that fell off of them. And about 5,000 years ago, they started a breeding program, and there's records of this one. 5,000 years ago, they started a breeding project to make them not shed, so that they could shear them, so that they could collect the fur, collect the wool, if you will, without having to traipse through the field to find it all. And it is one of the things that drove innovation during the Bronze Age, because one of the first tools we find them making during the Bronze Age are shears. They were the clampy kind, with the little, where it was just like salad tongs but they cut instead of like big scissors. You like the hand motions? It's like a puppet thing. Can't talk, Harding. Where was I? Oh, 20,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, they, my mom says I can't talk because I use my hands to talk. I have to stop arting to talk because I have to use my hands. I believe that. I'm not as bad as my daughter, though. My poor daughter, girl too, her first language was sign language. We taught her sign language when she was a baby. And this poor kid, I think she should get credit for English as a second language. When she goes to school, I think she should get scholarships and stuff for English as a second language, because sign language was the first language she learned. And still today, when she talks like this when she's talking. That's an accent. Where are we? What time is it? 4:41. Subtle hint. What is the subtle hint? Click the like button. Oh, cool. Yay. Subtle hint. 4:41. We were right on time with that. Look at that. All right. These things have huge herds. There'll be thousands of sheep in a herd. And the people that domesticated them 10,000 to 5,000 years ago, the people that domesticated them, they lived their whole lives around the cycle of the sheep. The sheep provided food, the sheep provided milk, the sheep provided fur. If you've ever watched baby sheep play in the wilderness, the sheep provided entertainment. The sheep were just the most important thing in what they had going on, because their whole lives depended on and around sheep. And the Bedouins in Iraq still live this way. We were in Iraq, and the Bedouins came through nearby. They didn't actually come through our tent, but they came through nearby, and they had hundreds, if not 1,000 sheep. They had hundreds of them. And their sheep didn't stay where they were. Their sheep wandered the whole area, because what do sheep know about security borders? And so their sheep wandered into our encampment. One of them got into my buddy Chad's tent. He was asleep when it happened. And just about the time he come running out to try to chase this sheep out, my other buddy Jim had a camera and was taking pictures of the sheep, and got a picture of my buddy Chad chasing a sheep out of his tent, pulling his pants up, because he was asleep, trying to get dressed to run out of the tent in a hurry so he could chase this sheep out. That is not what the photograph looked like. The photograph looked like something very different. And we teased Chad unmercifully for years. Chad, Daddy. We teased him for years about that, and it was all very innocent the way it happened, but we were not innocent. But Bedouins, back to my story, the, the Bedouins still live this way. The Bedouins still, they still have their sheep running in herds of hundreds, if not thousands. They still have their whole lives. Their whole lives are tied up to how the happiness and the usefulness of sheep. Daddy, you've been bad. Years. Oh yeah, the battle between sheep and cattle. The problem with sheep and cattle is the sheep come up in a dry and arid place. Mongolia, the Asiatic plains. The sheep came up in a very dry and arid place, and so they eat everything, and they eat it down to the ground. Let me draw this real quick. We'll pick this story up on the other side. Because you know I'm all about that ground, paint ground. I'm all about that ground, paint ground. I'm all about that ground, paint ground. We need more words for that song. I'm trying to paint ground. Because I know that's what Ivy's down for. Ivy's down for the paint drying. That sheep there is just a little bit tan. I was going to whiten the page, or I was going to change the color of the page to make the sheep look whiter. But when I'm looking at him, because it's a you, when I'm looking at her, she is not white. She is just a little bit yellow. So what we'll do is, instead of, because we have to, if we were shearing her wool, chances are we would then be bleaching her wool later on. So what we'll do right now to separate her from the white paper is we'll go ahead and cover her with just a little bit of yellow ochre. And that'll lift her up off the page. When the camera switches back around, you'll see that that'll lift her back up off the page. Let me dry that so that we can ink it. Yeah, I didn't feel like you had enough paint drying. I felt like that little bit of paint drying a minute ago is not enough to really dry the paint. Because I know some of y'all, the only reason you show up is the opportunity to see paint dry. And my electricity flickers because my air conditioner's going on. But it came on in the house, not out here where I would like to have air conditioning. That's something we're going to have to work on. So yeah, the battle between sheep herders and cattlemen is big, because cows just eat the top of the plant. The plant continues to grow and provide more food, but sheep eat it all the way down and will pull it up out of the roots. And so cattlemen hate sheep herders. They've been feuding for years. But that's really an American thing. That doesn't appear to be the issue around the world, because around the world, sheep and goats are herded way more often than American cattle. So that feud between them is really more of an American thing. There are approximately 100,000 sheep farms in the U.S. But of those sheep farms, only about a third of them shear their sheep. The rest of them are raising food, which is interesting to me because I don't remember ever going into a grocery store and seeing sheep in the meat market. I don't remember in my life. I don't remember ever seeing sheep in the meat market. Now, you could probably go to a butcher or a carniceria, which is still a butcher. You could probably go there and find sheep and goat, especially goat around here, because in Mexico and South America, goat is way more popular than beef, or it used to be. Beef is way more popular in Mexico now than it was, but traditionally goat was the meat of choice. So you can still go into some of the carnicerias and find goat, and you can probably go to a couple of the halal or kosher shops and find mutton or lamb, but you don't find it at H-E-B. You don't find it at Kroger. My mom says she sees it more living in Houston than she did in Oklahoma, and that is for sure, because Oklahoma, Texas is cattle country. Oklahoma is cattle country. So that is for sure that you would see it more there. But only about a third of the 100,000 farms that raise sheep, only about a third of them shear their sheep. The rest of them are just raising for butcher. The fur on those animals is too coarse to be useful, and it won't sell for enough money to justify the cost of shearing them. So they just compost the fur. But of the farms that do, that leaves 3.2 million sheep to produce 23. I was right the first time. 23 million pounds of wool every year. All of this stuff is pretty cool to me. 4-H and FFA raising sheep. They have grazing farms where people take the sheep that are too old to use anymore, and they let them graze the fire-prone areas. But guys, that is my sheep. Finished about 7 minutes early. Should have talked more. There is my version of that little sheep, my sketch of that little sheep right there. Let's see if we can get a picture of it from my perspective. We'll turn this microphone off, then we will eject this camera, and then we'll hang this cord up out of the way to make sure that it doesn't cast a shadow on what we're doing. Use both hands because I don't like dropping my phone on my artwork. Camera. You can always tell when I move when I'm drawing. You can always tell that I moved around. Why does that keep going away? So there we go. There it is, a little closer to my perspective. All right, so that's what we did this morning. The little girl has already pulled an egg for tomorrow. Let's see what she has in store for us tomorrow. we have, dun, 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 the big reveal is a saxophone. Is that a saxophone, or is that another kind of instrument that is closely resembles a saxophone? It says saxophone, so it's a saxophone. So tomorrow we'll probably talk about how saxophone became the sound of sexy music. And who knows what else we'll talk about. So if you're watching this, this is for Tuesday, July 15th. If you're watching this Tuesday, July 15th, and it's before 5:30 in the morning, then you're watching a trailer, and this is what we're about to do. So stick around. We'll get right on it. But for the rest of us, that's tomorrow's show. And we are done with today's show. So let's see. Is that it? Or is it time to dance? And then we dance. We dance until somebody says they see me dancing. And as soon as somebody says they see me dancing, I will know to take my mics off, and I won't be